Hi everyone, this is Menz here. I'm doing basically a breakdown of Sand River and the changes that happened during the 1.2 patch in World of Tanks. They didn't change a ton of this map to where the main changes that I'm going to be going over, if you can look at the mini map, come with the addition of this basically base support spot that we're gaming at it into Sand River. They give currently what side I'm on, but basically the Northwestern team a little bit better support locations to help out kind of the gully and the center area and also the southern dune area. A couple other little changes, they did make, but that's the main significant change that they made. Going over here, you'll notice it is different than the southeastern team. Their kind of base spot. This is a little bit more in your face and a little bit easier for people to pick out. To where you have two spots, one overlooking the center gully here, and then another one here that it doesn't really show up on the mini map. It looks like it's just rocks, but you can get out in this ledge. Technically shooting this way, but this is more for shooting up in this area. Now from these spots, much like the other side, more or less you're going to be able to lock down a lot of the center here, to where any enemies kind of coming past this rock here, you'll start seeing once you push past here, you're going to be start getting shot up here. If you head up here too, they'll be able to hit you this way, and they technically can reach not all the way back here. Basically the render range will stop working once you start getting in this area, but any tanks trying to push up here, unless you're doing it really early to get to this rock this way, they'll be able to shoot you basically down this lane here, to right about where you're able to tuck in back here. They can't reach back here, and you're safe at this rock unless you start pushing out. Now, one thing you'll notice, since they added this TD spot in, where you see the Borsig, they flattened a lot of this ridge here and removed a lot of cover. Basically, the last piece of cover, if you're coming on this side that my team's on, you're able to push to here, and if you can hold down, you have a strong turret, or if you're like a super heavy tank, technically you can kind of support from here without getting yourself into the ditch. That can be a little bit of a benefit because, if you're down here and the enemy kind of swarms you, this spot might not be able to help you if the enemy kind of gets down here. But you are pretty vulnerable to arty, don't get me wrong, and you also can get shot up from this way. But no longer can you push up from this side to this rock. There used to be a little bit more of like a ridge here, a little bit more cover. Not like super safe from arty, but you used to be able to fire down here, saying like a T110E3 while hold down. No one could really touch it, but they flattened that out so this sniping location can assist better. So there's a lot less cover for basically teams from this side pushing in. Outside of those changes here, they didn't really change anything in this area. In the town here, they did do a minor little tweak to where they did remove like a little bit of bushes or trees or something in this area, but it doesn't really matter honestly all that much. Just kind of looking at the mini map when I was doing a map strategy for this, I noticed that they changed up a little bit here, but if you're pushing right through here in the beginning, you're kind of asking for trouble, given that people can shoot you from a lot of different ways. So now both sides have their own kind of TD spots. This team over here, you're able to get up in this location, fire off, and if you need to back off, or kind of sit up in this area to support. So this this side's kind of, I would almost say, in a disadvantage in a way, only because a lot fewer people are gonna know kind of to sit in this location. It's not like really clearly defined. Both spots do provide pretty good shots, and from this area you're able to kind of push up a little bit more this way and still help your team out. So it still has the more or less the same level of support for across both bases, to where how this is going to change this map. So let me bring up my map strategy here. This is basically, I'm going to start with my newest one here. You'll find this on watguru.com with a little bit more written in depth here. Like this video, I guess, want to cover mainly the changes. This is my newest strategy, to where you'll basically see that trying to push up into like the F, or not, G5-ish, F5-ish, you can't really push as far from either side now, because both sides are going to get torn to shreds from basically the enemy base, because both sides are going to have a lot of people camping. And also the southern dunes, there's people down there. Basically, this is a nerf to playing what I called the gully. You know, the depressed area where a lot of people went with like super heavies, like heavily armored TDs, some mediums and stuff. It's basically a nerf there, and it's kind of a buff, even though they didn't change anything, to like the northern part of the map that didn't see a lot of people playing. Since now it's a little bit more worth your while to play the north, and possibly even further south in the South Dunes, since you're not able to push through the center as much anymore. It's mainly as a kind of like an anchor point, to where as your team starts either pushing north or preferably pushing south, if you're down there in that gully, you'll be able to start slowly inching up and, you know, taking shots and, you know, whatnot, and preoccupying their tank destroyers and people camping the base. Now, if you compare this to the 1.0 map strategy, so right before 1.2, I have this map strategy, you'll notice that F1 spot, you know, goes away, and in the gully you can play that a little bit further up from either side early. And also the blue team, you'll notice down in H5, could get into where that mosque is, I believe it is, the one indestructible building in the, let me clearly define it here, the one indestructible building here. The blue team technically could get here a little bit better, since your team usually could push up a little bit further. You're a little bit safer to get to this building. The main drawback to that was getting shot up from here. But now with 1.2, basically you're not going to want to go up into the town as much from the blue side early on. You're going to want to stay, that's basically the spot near the mosque, is that rock I pointed out in the beginning here. You're going to want to go down here more so, rather than sit up here. But anyway, you know, when it comes to the map strategies here, you'll notice a few little changes to where, you know, you can look at the full map strategy on my website, but basically, like, the consensus that I kind of came up with is, usually, like, I recommended people not to go north too much on this map, but with 1.2, makes a little bit more sense, especially from the blue side. Like the yellow team that's on my map strategy here, you can still play a little bit more south, because if you look down in the southern dune area, you can technically still push to the mosque, say in like a heavy tank or like a, you know, heavily armored TD or something. If you go from J1 down into the town, it's not 100% risk free, but it is a possibility. But coming from the blue side, it's a little bit safer to play the north in a slower tank. But I'm sure we'll see more people starting to, you know, kind of spread out on this map more, rather than focus mainly like in the center, the south, with, you know, a few tanks playing the north. As far as just like mediums and lights, you might see some other tanks up there. But one thing I have noticed, which I spent, you know, a couple minutes, I pulled up a really old video, I think it was from like 2013, for Sand River, where, you know, some people are kind of angry at Wargaming for doing this, because, you know, it does balance the teams, to where before 1.2 here, the Northwestern team didn't really have any base support, whereas the Southeastern team did, to where it did make it pretty unbalanced, to where them adding in this, you know, F1 spot in 1.2, it does balance the sides out, to where the Northwestern team, I would still say, has a slight advantage in, you know, the southern area of the map, whereas the Southeastern team has a slight advantage in the northeastern part of the map, just as far as like positioning and like initial routes, like distance and stuff like that goes. but it does make the spawn spots and teams a little bit more balanced. Bringing up this map here, so this is going to be taken from 2013 on Sand River, and I highlight it. So the old map lines up pretty well here with the new one as far as like main features and whatnot. I got it to line up as somewhat as close as possible as I could. But the red locations that I kind of highlighted, especially the northeast mountains there, you couldn't actually go up into them. Where like the mountains, you can see there was a little road leading to nowhere, and no one really went up there except for people just trying to be useless. But more or less, a lot of this map that people know right now, it was really cut off to where, like especially the gully area, like in the center near the town, you kind of could get in there once they added in physics, but you really couldn't get out of it too well. There was like a lot of water in there. It was jagged, and pretty much if you fell in there, you're just gonna die. It's not like where today you can kind of drive through and pretty much play it like a normal flank. You used to not be able to play that at all. It was just like a a death bowl to where nobody really tried to go in there because it was useless. But you can kind of see the difference between what Sand River used to be and where it is now, to where outside of like a few like mountains in the northeast, and then you have a couple of ridges, and a lot of the buildings are pretty much destructible on this map outside of, I believe, just one. There might be a couple other thrown in, but it should just be the one that's basically I'm looking at right now. The map as a whole is pretty much wide open, for lack of better words, to where the old map, pretty much you had the southern dunes, you had people fighting in the ridge, maybe if you're like a light, but pretty much you just had two flanks. People would either go north, south, and brawl it out, and then the rest of the people just sat at the base and camped. Where, it kind of sounds similar to Sand River right now, but there's a lot more opportunities to where, hopefully people kind of realize these changes. They do make sense. They're going to change the way that people play this map. It does screw over like super heavies and slower heavily armored tanks, but those tanks will, you either still play like the gully area, or you can, if you're on the blue side, play a little bit more of like the northern dune area, so like D7ish, or technically, not to say base camp, but you can kind of sit a little bit closer to your base, hopefully sucking the enemy in, where you just murder them because they overextend. The southern team, the super heavies, can play a little bit more of like the southern dune area and that like overlook spot in F1 if they don't want to go to the gully. It's still a decent spot though. You still need to hold that. But I wouldn't recommend like super heavies and stuff from the yellow team that's on my map strategy here to go north. Like normal heavy tanks are fine, but something like really slow, like 26 kilometers an hour or slower, or even like 30, you shouldn't really make that trek for the yellow team. You'll get hit up a lot more unless you take that really long route along the edge of the map. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the little snippet of Sand River here with 1.2. You can take a look at the full guide, walkover.com. I just updated it all for 1.2, reflecting the changes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little update when it comes to the map strategy here. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Have a good one.